This is not going to be easy. Anelka, Chelsea, saved. Imagine missing the penalty in the Champions League final for Chelsea against Manchester United. That's exactly what happened to the great journeyman that was Nicolas Anelka. I'm looking at how individuals can impact and influence positively a team. Nicolas Anelka misunderstood. Now Anelka had many different clubs, and he played for France, and he was off the team, and he was on the team, and he had so many different things going on. I'm looking at here though how it all stemmed from this individual confidence that he had in himself. So Anelka believed in himself. That's the thing that saved him over the years throughout all the different clubs. He, in spite of everything, he just knew what to do, and almost an introverted character, you could say, and that's being positive because he has that long French face, kind of unemotive speech patterns, and you can see how others can get bothered by that. Such was his class. Now his class and confidence so came from his time as a youngster. Watch here as he just blows them away at a very young age. Where did this confidence come from? It came from a time when he was really young. This is from the very start of his career. That's Anelka just slotting goals home at ease, and the graceful athlete that he was up front. He could take the ball from halfway and just bring it to where it wanted to be, into that back of that net. Now a few years later, his childhood brought him to Paris Saint-Germain, the great club in Paris, of the capital, of course, of France. Now the French Football Federation loved having the likes of Thierry Henry, who is another guy around the same age group as Nicolas Anelka, coming through their football federation, and this is what built up their success many years later. They were so proud of it, and this is Anelka's class at only 16 years of age. So Anelka always believed in himself, even on the training ground. You know, he was very determined to be, even though he was very, very young, he was only 16 years of age with Paris Saint-Germain, when he realised, hey, I can do this, and the ball spills to him. He breaks free, flicks, and he's in the open and uses pace and slots it home. Typical Anelka that we saw many, many years after that. Now you think at 16 years of age, a guy has reached the pinnacle. He's playing in the biggest team in the country. But not for Anelka. Anelka was ambitious. He had that want to score goals and the need to actually play at a higher level. Now, as big and all as playing for PSG is, and especially for a teenager, Anelka was highly ambitious and he wanted right now. And so he left for England, and for the capital of England, London. And there he found a fellow Frenchman, Arsene Wenger, who was extremely well respected. So under Wenger's wing, Anelka reckoned he would prosper. So off he went to Arsenal. So the thing about it was for the French Football Federation at the time was that most players stayed. They stayed with their teams, or at least in France as a teenager, for a couple of years. But the consternation, as you can see, came with regards to the French not wanting him to leave their football academy. Why would he go when he's so young and they have nurtured him? But he went to Arsenal, and it wasn't all plain sailing for the first few months. In fact, he was kind of brooding and thinking about leaving. See, one of the things with Anelka is that people used to think he was sulky, that he kind of got into himself and didn't communicate exactly how he felt. But great managers on the opposite side of things, like Arsene Wenger, realised was something not right. So even as a teenager, as a professional footballer, Anelka had this kind of reputation for not being settled, for not communicating well. But the best way that he could communicate was out on the football field, as he did when he eventually came off the bench for Arsenal after lots of trouble, but did a wonderful thing with the ball. So here he is on the pitch, and of course again, look at this skill, just gets around the player and then tightly brings it over to the left side, slots it home. So Anelka was starting to do these wonderful things with the ball. He was using his athleticism, his flexibility, flicked it there for Mark Overmars on the wing, slots it home against Man United. Now that was a huge goal in the league because it switched the momentum. So Anelka suddenly is projected into being this cult hero, this young player that Arsenal have, that they can begin to challenge the might of Manchester United, who had superstars at the time, Beckham, Solskjaer, Cantona, these kind of players that were leading them up the table. But Anelka was now just beginning to flourish for Arsenal. So it was time for him to get into the 1998 World Cup squad, where maybe they could actually do it for the first time and win the World Cup in 98. But it wasn't all to work out for Anelka yet again. Something went wrong from the individual and the team. Now the thing about Anelka is that he's not actually one to brood. This is what he said all these years later, decades later in fact. And that was shown after the 98 World Cup, when even though France became champions and he was completely ousted, 8 months later he went to Wembley, to the home of that Anelka's privacy was infringed upon. And it wasn't just Anelka himself, but his parents. Anelka felt so at sea in the place that he found it very difficult to actually make any way of an impression on the football team itself, and the media hounded him like this. Things were not going well at all for Anelka. Perhaps at this stage, his early 20s, he had been written off, that he was some sort of complainer. But Anelka did grind it out. In fact, the Champions League came asking for him, and it was the Champions League semi-final where he really made his mark for Real Madrid. They always say the cream rises to the top, and so it was with Anelka, because when they were going for their 8th Champions League final, and victory that is, Anelka was selected and he had a part in the victory too. So Anelka could turn things around, and really and truly, even though he had been in his mid-20s and he had played in so many leagues, the top leagues, he played in the French league, he played in England, and he'd also played now at this stage in Spain and had won the ultimate prize of the Champions League, he was still seen as perhaps not the most credible of characters. So off he went to Liverpool, the famed club in the north of England. And Liverpool were a team that needed the services of a striker, somebody consistent. There had been this kind of allurement of their team in the early 90s that they were Spice Boys, but at this stage they really needed solidity and somebody to carry them forward. And Anelka did that and scored goals too. But despite it not working out at Liverpool, he was still attracted to another Premier League team who was just about growing. The great of Manchester City took him under its wing, and he proved to be successful in some ways. He actually scored against his former manager Gerard Houllier. Now Houllier had explained, even though Houllier himself was French as well, how he didn't feel that Anelka was just the guy to actually stay there, because it was Anelka's party's fault, and it wasn't Anelka. If it wasn't Anelka, it wasn't certainly Liverpool's fault, that's for sure. And then there was confusion on Anelka's side, because he thought that he had done well and he wanted to stay with Liverpool. Nevertheless, Manchester City came calling and off he went, and with that he proved that he had that ability. But on the day he did, the French manager didn't feel that he had, even though he came over to watch him play. That's Nicolas Anelka. You too can be an individual and influence a team. Everybody can, if they have that ability, that is. So please subscribe. Hope you liked the video, and if you do, well, come back and we'll see you next time. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.